see if it picks up the signal. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Another Herding Cats this time, and joining me is my well, I can't say pretty, but my co-host Artie. Artie, well, I still think that you have more like your dog, a bit shady. But okay, so how have you been doing? Okay, and we have Carl. I see Carl's in the back room too. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so this was pretty much Artie's idea to have our guest of today on. So, I want to chip it over and introduce our guest for tonight. Our guest is Erin Lewis. So, welcome, Erin. How have you been doing? Okay, that's great. So, Artie, you wanted to have Erin on, so expand on that a little, because hmm.
Have my opinions, which I assume we all pretty much share, but it's a good day for us to have that conversation as well.
Hmm.
But I was
Okay.
mostly interested in how your career had, if it had anything to do with your atheism, or you, does being an author have anything to do with the fact that you're an atheist? Did you become an atheist, or did you start out one?
That's always a tricky question. And I've probably answered it, I don't know, 100 times by now. I grew up sort of soft Catholic. My family was Catholic, but I am 15 to 9 years separated from my five siblings. So by the time I came around, my parents were divorced, and we're all six of us are from the same parents. And Catholicism was kind of regulated to the background at that point. So of course there was like holidays and things like that. Church was more of an annoyance. It wasn't something I had to do, or at least not very often. We weren't, maybe we said grace at table, before dinner and things like that, but it wasn't really like a huge part of my life. Um, and so it was something that I just sort of accepted was it. You asked some tricky questions, and the answer was always, well, God did it, and he works in mysterious ways. um, and that was just sort of the end of it. As I grew older, I started to have a lot of doubts when I really started to think about it. Especially like the fundamental principles of Christianity and Catholicism, and the whole blood thing and the sin thing and heaven and hell and praying and all that kind of stuff. There was a lot of it that didn't quite jive, but I just didn't really put a lot of thought into it. But I knew that I had doubts, but I generally tried to like stuff those doubts, because when you voice them, it was not met very kindly usually. So I just sort of let it go until I'd say probably my early to mid 20s, when it was finally like, well, why am I praying, and why is God helping, certain people, and, letting babies starve and die and that kind of thing. And so I became interested in the subject. And when I started to read about it, obviously I started with, the four horsemen, and actually a couple of other books first. One was about the soul. My nephew, 8-year-old nephew, had passed of cancer. And, we went through a lot of praying and things like that before. And so that was what really piqued my curiosity into actually looking into the scientific aspect of whether there was any kind of proof of God or afterlife and things like that. Mary Roach's Spook was a big one for me. Her book on basically paranormal stuff in the afterlife. And she approaches it from a really objective type standpoint. She doesn't really talk about being an atheist so much, but she really explores the scientific aspect. And so from there, it led into more traditional atheist books. And then I realized, hey, I'm an atheist. And up until then, being just the way I had grown up, the word atheist itself, I hadn't actually known what the real definition was. It was, you're a Satan worshiper, you're evil, you're going to hell, you're a bad person. That's what atheism meant. Until I actually looked at it, and then I was like, oh, that's not scary at all. That's actually like totally normal and what I am. And why am I running away and afraid of words and, and numbers like, 666, oh, it's evil. The number 13, we're all going to die, and then it's like, oh, wait. They're just numbers. What the fuck am I afraid of?
So weird.
Which is actually one of the reasons why I use 666 in my handle. Number one, because nobody ever takes that number. So it's pretty much always available. And number two, because it was kind of a poke at the fear that religion is really based around. We're supposed to be afraid of these supernatural beings that are judging us, and apparently, if we don't do things the right way, we're going to like burn and be tortured forever, which on its face brings up all sorts of issues of ethics and morality and everything else, abusive relationships. So that was kind of how my atheism started. My writing started, or I guess my stripping started basically because I hated my job, and I kind of have an inherent problem with authority. So I don't take direction very well, make a pretty shitty employee. I hated the job I was working at, sitting in a cubby with a headset on, answering phone calls and trying to think I was going to, work my way through college that way. And I started dancing and realized that I could be self-employed and I could make more money. And if somebody told me what to do and I didn't like them, I could tell them to, eat shit and go someplace else. And the two kind of conjoined when I started writing my memoirs, basically. And I really had gotten tired of like the stereotypes that existed about strippers and things like that. And I thought, you know what, I think I just need to tell my story. And then I ended up getting involved originally with the Freedom from Religion Foundation because they helped me out with an incident I had with my son's school. I went to a convention. I met the president of my local chapter, and she inspired my book, Expose Yourself, which talks about atheism, humanism, critical thinking, and things like that. So it was sort of a weird, like unholy matrimony that fell into place. None of it was really particularly intended. It just sort of happened that way. So turns out both strippers and atheists have a lot of like stigmas and stereotypes and misconceptions. So I guess that's kind of how I became the, an advocate for both. So not generally speaking, not my intention. I really just didn't like my job and figured out that I was an atheist, and it sort of snowballed from there.
We have a lot in common. I don't take orders lightly, so I want to do what I want to do. So yeah, and that's what made me start my own business, although a quite different one. But so and the whole hell thing, it that's one of the things that I never got my head around, and as opposed to that, the whole heaven thing either. I mean, to me, they're both hell. If you have to be there for an eternity doing the exact same things, I always compare it with if you have a favorite food and people say, okay, this is what you're going to have for the next 5 years. After 5 years, it's not going to be your favorite food anymore. And that's how I see heaven. If everything is beautiful, at some time it's going to be horrific. So I don't want to be in either. And I do make the joke. If we're going to go to hell, at least we're going to have good music. So then let me go there, because that's probably where all the good rock artists are, and the people that I like to listen to. So I'd prefer that.
In hell, the song that plays on the speakers the whole time for eternity is Talking Heads' Heaven.
Oh,
which is ironic.
No, I'm thinking Nickelback. I'm thinking Striper. That's gonna be
oh, there's an image that I could do without Striper.
When I was a kid, hell really wasn't. I don't know if that's like an evangelical thing. And honestly, just recently I found out that like evangelicals don't consider Catholics Christian, and
unless they're trying to tell us how many Christians in the world.
Well, I was really shocked by that, actually, because I guess I just didn't really understand the difference. But like I always joke, because I was raised Catholic, I never read the Bible, right? I mean, like they didn't really talk about like it didn't hear about hell very much. You know what I'm saying? Hell was for like serial killers, and heaven was really all about being with grandma, and hopefully my dead pets and things like that. I didn't really and there wasn't a lot of like, oh, you do this, you do that, you're going to hell. It was very much, well, if you're a good person and you don't hurt people, you're going to go to heaven, or you're going to have a pleasant afterlife is basically the concept that I grew up with. So when I really entered the secular community and the atheist community, I was really shocked to find out really how extreme a lot of the beliefs were, because that just wasn't my experience. It was just so like cursory. It was very much in the background. There wasn't a lot of like preachy bullshit. It just didn't happen that way. I didn't even make communion. So there wasn't a lot of, there just wasn't a lot of that. So I was just really surprised that I learned so much more about Christianity as an atheist than I did as a Catholic. And especially the fact that they don't actually, that there's such a division there. I recently just finished. She came to town here to speak at an FFRF event. Catherine Stewart wrote a book called The Good News Club, and she talks about how the evangelicals would insert themselves into America's public schools, but they would try to convert Catholic kids too, and that just really blew me away. That was the epiphany I had. I was like, really? I'm like, we're not Christian, but we believe in the whole like, or the whole point was, the death on the cross and the blood and the sacrifice and all that stuff. So I don't understand how they really parse that out, and they get off on saying that Catholics aren't Christian.
Well, and Mormons aren't Christians either.
I don't get now. Mormons are a whole nother thing, and I gotta say I learned a lot about that too, which is even weirder.
I read Under the Banner of Heaven and learned everything I wanted to know about Mormons.
Oh, I don't need to know or want to know anything else. I actually have Mormon neighbors who are about the sweetest people in the whole world. We've never discussed religion or anything like that. And I'm actually very thrilled to have them as neighbors. They're quiet, they keep to themselves, they're old as dirt. We exchange cookies, and they have a lemon tree, we have an orange tree. It's a great relationship. They're awesome people. And if I think about it too much and I'm thinking, are they wearing the magic underwear? Did they really buy into the fact that this dude had like magic tablets and
seer stones?
And then I wonder about like the cognitive dissonance there must be when they find out that dude was like convicted for fraud before he actually came up with all this stuff.
They teach it.
That's
false accusations. Really, that's they teach it.
Yeah, that's where I really
it happened, but it was very bad.
I really lose the whole thread there. And when it comes to interacting with religious people on like a daily basis, I guess I engage in my own willful ignorance in that respect. I don't really want to, I don't want to think about it too much, because otherwise I'm like, here are these lovely people, they must be stupid.
So, such great people that believe all this hateful shit.
Yes. Yeah. I experienced my own conflict there. Cause like I said, I really like them. They're great people. But I cannot wrap my head around how people believe that kind of thing. There was an article I wrote, a while ago for Only Sky that talks about how, and actually I wrote something along this for FFRF too, where I think a lot of times people, they just simply don't think about that. So you have a lot of religious people that are good people. And they just don't delve into a lot of the minutia and a lot of the logic and that kind of stuff. And they just really compartmentalize. So like with my mother, who considered, she identified as a Catholic until she passed. Her general idea was what I was taught, was that if you're a good person, you'll be treated well in the afterlife. So all of the Bible stories, all of the sin, all of that stuff was, just didn't matter. It was just all like stuff. Her concept of God really was more based on her own sense of ethics and morality and the way that she treated people, as opposed to, people that weaponize religion, which probably falls into what we have going on last night and today. But it's one of the reasons why I don't consider myself an anti-theist. I am certainly when it comes to harm, but I do think the vast majority of people that believe in any type of supernatural thing they're just simply, it's a way to describe their own morality, their own way of life, and their own way of thinking. And I think also it's a way to kind of soften the blow of death itself. Not only our own mortality, but, when we lose our loved ones, heaven and the afterlife, be it whatever it is, it's a coping mechanism, I think. And I don't think that everybody's equipped to accept the fact that this is it. But I don't necessarily think that either makes them stupid or makes them bad people. There's a ton of really good people out there that believe in silly things.
I fully agree, but what you just said is what makes you the ultimate heretic, because that is works based. Evangelicals and Baptists, that is why they hate the Catholics, because you can't get to heaven by doing good works. It's all the grace of God. All you need to do is believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, and that's it. And that is exactly why I am an anti-theist. But I think you and I might have a different definition of the word, because I think the religions are doing the harm. 9 out of 10 people who are in the religion are good people. I spend an awful lot of time going on Christian channels, and I've made several friends among the Christians who believe in the young Earth creationism, so the most literal form of the Bible. They reject evolution. The world's 6,000 years old, but they're really good people, and so the fact that they're wrong, that is, for me at least, then the only thing that I can go after. And 9 out of 10 times, I will try, but with certain people, I will take a different approach and see if I can do that over the long run. But there are things in religion that are extremely harmful. And so my definition of being an anti-theist is I want religion gone. I don't want to ban it. I don't want to outlaw it. What I would like to see is that we get, globally, we get better education, so people won't fall for the stupid things that a religion teaches, and will see what the errors are. I want people to go and read the Bible, because if anything is going to make you an atheist, that's the tool to do it. Read your Bible, see what it says, and then make your own choice. And that's how I want to eradicate religion. Not by banning it, not by vilifying it that openly. The people will see that the moment they start realizing what they believe and what it makes them do and how it makes them think. That is when you realize how bad it actually is. So,
I'd say that's probably how I feel about it too. I mean, it's fun sometimes to, of course, poke fun at it when you're looking at some of the more ridiculous ideas behind the beliefs. But behind all of it, we're still dealing with human beings that are fallible and emotional and, bumblefucking their way through life just like everybody else. And so I really try to, when I'm not joking and making fun and, that kind of stuff, I really do try to identify with the human aspect of why people feel that way. But I do think that that kind of the whole point of religion, especially when you're looking at it, when it's used as a control mechanism, you know, they really don't want you to investigate not only religion, but other stuff. Because if you're going to be fooled into believing some of these more outrageous claims and things that are obviously false, well, that's going to lead to believing into things that could really be harmful. So it's basically pushing a lack of critical thinking, that can leave people vulnerable to other cons and scams if we're going to compare religion's falsehoods to scams and cons. I think it's really easy. And then of course there's the conflation with, oh, well, that person's a Christian, they must be a good person. Well, we know for a fact that's not true. Of course, the converse is also true. There's a lot of shithead atheists too. So, I think it really boils.
But nobody ever tries to calm you by saying, don't worry, I'm a good atheist.
Yes. And I think that is where the online atheist community, or the atheist community in general, really, carries a lot of weight as far as just normalizing non-belief and saying that it's really okay to not believe in bullshit. I know that I spent a long time, either when I had, because I would probably say that, going back to your original question, like what I said is always a very tricky thing to answer for me, because I'm not sure that I really ever truly believed, or that maybe I did and that belief just like faded over time until I finally said and discovered what the word atheist meant and finally actually looked into it. But I really believe that my own personal ideas about it kind of faded. It wasn't some like crazy epiphany where I was like, oh my God, God's not real. No, it was sort of like, I'm praying in my head and I'm like, is anybody really listening? Because I'm not thinking anybody's listening. And they're like, hey, God's got a plan for you. And I'm like, well, he sure is taking his fucking time.
Why are all the answers
like,
always
I'm not
coming
hearing
from me?
anything. Everybody's like, he's going to reveal himself. And I'm like, nobody revealed nothing to me.
It's gross.
One time in the VIP room, somebody revealed himself to me. And I don't think that was the fucking, deity. So it really kind of faded. I never had that like really hardcore, like, that kind of thing. I remember a little bit of that when I was a kid thinking, oh, God loves me. And then I was like, the fuck? I don't think it's there.
For a lot of us, and definitely me, I had given up on any illusions of me actually being a believer. But it was a good 2 or 3 years after that I finally let go of the fear of hell. Did you go through any of that? Or hell wasn't like a thing that we focused on in my church, but it was definitely a motivator.
I don't know. Maybe I was just conceited, but I never really imagined me getting sent to hell. Like I always kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, I get it.
I don't know. Maybe I was a touch like narcissistic, but I was like, I'm a good person. I never really, and I wasn't taught that, I was really taught that hell was like for the bad of the bad. And so I just never put myself in that category. So I can't say I was really afraid of hell.
I was curious because most Catholic churches teach about purgatory.
Yes.
And purgatory can be temporary, or if you're not up to snuff, you could spend eternity there. It's not that bad. It's not that great.
Yeah, see, and I think it's a huge difference between the way that my siblings were raised and the way that I was raised, because there was such a gap. After my last brother, that was when, they decided that birth control was cool. And then right before my parents got divorced, my mother had gone off birth control, which is why I'm here. So they had already really let go a lot of that really, the fundamentalist type beliefs. So between me and my siblings, we had a really different experience, which of course made things tricky when my mom passed, because I was already an atheist at that point. I had also discussed all of that with my mom before she died, and she'd actually revealed to me and only me, which really sucks, that she was really an agnostic, and because nobody else in my family thought that when we were going through the grieving process and things like that, it made it difficult, because I wasn't really, they're talking about mom in heaven, and, she used to love her riding her lawnmower in heaven, and playing her instruments and things like that. She actually was a harpist, so she got her harp before she went to heaven. And, that was a hard thing for me to participate in. It almost made the grieving process harder for me, because we had that huge gap in thinking about the afterlife. So I certainly wasn't going to pull the rug out from under them when they're, that's what's making them feel better and helping them get through it. But at the same time, I didn't have a lot of comfort from my immediate family, because that's not what I believed. And so it was one of those things where I was kind of pretending and being supportive for, for their sake. Because obviously I still love my siblings. I mean, most of them are assholes, but I still love them. And, I don't want to see them hurting either. So the last thing I'm going to be doing is like, well, no, mom's actually just a pile of ash right now. I couldn't go there. So there was just a really big difference in the way that I grew up with religion and the way that my siblings and the rest of my family did. So, and that's still actually a huge point of contention now.
So are you an oops baby or a blessing?
Oh yeah. Oh no, huge oops. Okay. I was referred to as the accident.
I've learned that the more religious the family is, the more often that the last child is a blessing.
Yeah, no, that's a big pain in the ass.
One of my really good friends, her oldest sibling is 33 years older than her. And so her parents were really old when she was in high school. And then I met her in her 30s, and her mom was still alive. She was 92 when I met her. And she was one of those blessings that I constantly calling her oops baby. Blessing.
I think one of the favorite things my mom ever said to me was that, you know, they said you were probably going to be retarded, because she was 40. And she goes, but I was going to love you anyway. And I'm like, thanks, Mom. So
fucking great.
Back when it was still socially acceptable to say that word.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, moms can always say it to their own kids.
Mom said some pretty awesome things.
I had a really similar thing happen with a friend of mine's dad about 3 or 4 months before he passed. He told the friend and I, while just the three of us were on a bike ride together, that he was an atheist and had been for a few years. Well, his wife is one of those super religious people that sings happy birthday to Jesus and makes a birthday cake for Jesus on Christmas. And then her son, who did time for running cons, came out of prison as a pastor. So
figure
weird that a con man would go to prison and then come out as a pastor.
Crazy.
But what had happened was the family was, well, her half of the family, part of the family, she's not her mom, my friend's mom, very religious. And we knew what her dad had said and how he felt. Oh, the other thing was that he was going to divorce his wife until he got diagnosed. And then he decided that he wanted to make sure that she was taken care of, which was great, except that none of his kids got anything. And she took all of it. And the fucking kid. Why'd you fuck it up, Dad? But at any rate, it was really uncomfortable at the funeral because it's a bunch of, you know, this kind of Christian and his stepson, the con man pastor, gets up and he starts telling a story that I know from jump is a lie. Because it starts with, he was such a believer in Christ. I know that's not true. So everything that came after that was a lie. And he got about halfway through it, and I stood up from the middle of the fucking thing, walked in front of 1,000 people to get my honky ass out of there because I was done. I wasn't going to be able to keep my mouth shut any longer. I didn't think anything of that. I had never cared for that guy. Always thought he was a slimy piece of shit. And here I am watching him lie to family about a man who's laying in a box in front of him. Fuck you, you piece of shit.
See, and I had similar feelings with the fact that my mom had talked about, you know, when I got involved with FFRF and they had, you know, published an article of mine, you know, my mom was very supportive. And so we finally had that conversation and, you know, I told her I was an atheist and she was supportive as a Catholic. And, you know, she told me that she knew a long time ago that her, you know, that the Bible was obviously didn't make any sense. I think her biggest thing was that she brought up Adam and Eve and she goes, well, how did they have any kids? You know, and how could they have populated the world? She goes, obviously that doesn't make any sense. And she was raised from like kindergarten through college. In Catholic schools. She was married to my dad, I think at 17 or 18. So, I mean, that was like her whole life. And she told me that, you know, that she knew that it was probably a thing that there was no God and no afterlife. Her justification for remaining a Catholic was that, she said that she hoped that there was a heaven because she really wanted to see her parents again. And, you know, she liked the people at her church. She liked going there and, you know, socializing. My mom was kind of a social butterfly. She was a musician. And so that was her thing, but it wasn't, so she was technically an agnostic. She just had never told anybody that. So of course at the memorial and when we're talking about her, everybody's like, oh, she was a devout Catholic and she was this and that. And it's like, she wasn't though. She wasn't at all. But me as an atheist, and at that point, everybody in my family had pretty much known, even if it wasn't something that we discussed, they knew that that was going on. Because I mean, when I had my first article published, I was pretty excited about it. You know, even if it was just in a newsletter, I was like, "Holy shit! Somebody gives a crap about what I, you know, like they took my words and actually put them in print." And you know, so I was excited about that. So I shared that with everybody. But then once I got kind of the prickly blowback, I was like, "Oh, you should probably like." You know, downplay that, which of course is difficult when you're trying to relate to somebody about your, you know, you talk about your life and whatever. So that made it hard. But the fact that she didn't tell anybody but me, you know, it just sucked. And I had that kind of feeling where, you know, a lot of the religious aspect of like her memorial and, you know, talking about her and things like that after she was gone just felt so like disingenuous, because I just really wanted to scream to the world, you know, but all she wanted was to, you know, she had a glimmer of hope that she was going to get to see her parents. That's what she said, was that I just hope my mom and dad are there to meet me when I pass. And I ended up writing about this somewhere else too. Now I can't remember where. That I think that may have actually happened in her mind as she was going. That's what she believed. That's what she hoped for. And one of the things that I found comfort for when I think about it is because she believed that and she wanted that. I'm hoping that in her head, that's what happened before she, you know, was actually gone. So I do hope, and I do in my own head, I hope that was her last memory, was getting to see my grandparents. So, and who, despite their Catholicism, were also really good people. They just were.
Our fellow host
Catholic, and
our fellow host Lilith is in the chat, and she wants you to know that your mother sounds very sweet the way you talk about her. So just convey.
And she also loved fart jokes.
See,
riding lawnmower, laughed at fart jokes.
She was awesome.
Yeah. But the thing you mentioned now is one of the things that at times I think can be harmful, and that is the living with the idea that you're going to see your dead relatives again in heaven. So I grew up as an atheist. I never was religious. The first church I went to was when I was 16, when the wife of a friend of our family passed away, and she was Catholic. He was an atheist. She was a Catholic, and she wanted to have a Catholic service. During the entire service, there was no mention of God. There was no mention of heaven. There was no mention of anything religious at all. It was just, from what I saw, people dressed up in long gowns with a pot with a little smoke in it, waving around when they came up the aisle. And then the whole service was talking about the woman, how she lived her life, talking about the kids, talking about what it was for them to lose their mother at such a young age, because they were, 13 and 15 at the time, 2 daughters. And so I walked away from that, and I was in a church, still no concept of God, because he was never mentioned. But here's the thing. As I said, I grew up an atheist. I lost my mother in 2016. I have the idea. So when she was getting older, and when she had 2 huge brain tumors that were removed, and when they removed the last one, shortly after that, she suffered a small stroke, and then later a more severe stroke, and a day after that she passed away. I knew that she was going towards the end of her life, so I made the most out of it to spend my time, talk about all the things that I wanted to talk about, because I knew if she would pass away, that would be it. That would have been my last chance to talk about things that I wanted to talk about. And that is one thing. Another thing is when people are fighting. I think that if you are convinced that after people pass away, you're never going to see them again. You're never going to have a chance to settle things anymore. I think you will make more of an effort while you're here to make sure that the people you love, that if there's a difference of opinion, or if there's anything coming up, that you settle that before they pass away. And that is another thing that at times I find harmful, because people will think, well, we'll see each other in heaven anyway, and then everything will be fine again. I'm not sure if a lot of people think that way, but I do see that atheists usually tend to make more of an effort to make this life count, because we know it's the only one we get. And
that I agree with. What I would take issue with, as far as people thinking that they're able to maybe make amends in the afterlife, is that I'm going to make my own supposition here. I think that a lot of people, religious or not, have the inkling or the idea, whether they're willing to admit it or not, that this is probably it. So I do think that, as far as like living my life and like taking chances, or taking, making sure that I'm making the most out of opportunities I have, or, making sure that I take the opportunity to tell my kid that I love him, or my stupid cat, who's just really stupid, that I love her, and that kind of stuff. So I do think that as an atheist, I make an effort to make sure that I'm making the most out of my time here. But I think that even people that do believe in an afterlife, be it a fundamental religion or just a simple supernatural belief, I do think that the vast majority of people suspect that this is it, or at least that this is our chance. This is our time to, what's on earth is different than whatever could possibly be after. Because you see even religious people, or, the higher power people or spiritual people or whatever, that are still making the effort to try to, tie things up before they go.
Yeah.
So almost like maybe they don't want to quite acknowledge or admit that this is probably the end of it. But, maybe it's more like, I'm getting ready to take a really long trip, so I want to make sure my ends are tied up. But I honestly think that there's a lot of people that pretend, or that know in the back of their mind that this is it, regardless of what they say on the outside.
Well, there's one thing that I do like to think about. So the reason this channel exists, the reason that I'm on social media, is one guy, Kent Hovind. I bumped into a Kent Hovind video, and I thought, if this is what adults believe, I need to do something. If I can save only one. Now, after following Kent Hovind since I discovered him, he's now on his fourth wife. Right? So
and they keep getting more and more looking like him. It's fucking gross.
But here's the thing.
Yeah, look it up.
Let's suppose that heaven is real. That's going to be pretty awkward when you get to heaven and all of your wives are there and all of your in-laws are there. That's I would like a video of that when that happens. So you get there.
That's actually one of the reasons why I think the way that I do when it comes to, do people actually believe in, the clouds and the wings and the harps and the angels and all that kind of stuff. Because there's a lot of, you don't have to think too far before you start running into problematic ideas like that.
Oh yeah. No, you don't actually have to think at all.
I wrote kind of a shorter novel that's out for submission. I'm waiting on my first projection. But it actually, I talk about somebody who gets, an atheist. She happens to be a stripper, go figure. And she dies unexpectedly. She dies an atheist, but was raised Catholic. And as she's dying, she sort of reactionarily confesses and professes her belief in God and Jesus. And she's really just, she's dying. So that's just kind of what's happening. And so she comes back and she ends up, in line, standing in front of the pearly gates, with St. Peter and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, well, obviously they're going to send me to hell, but somehow she ends up getting in heaven. And it turns out that it sucks. A lot of because of what you just mentioned, and that it's really judgy and that the whole point of heaven is, to love God. It really has nothing to do with whether you're good people. So she's basically trapped in heaven with a bunch of shitheads and discovers that she'd rather be in hell. So she spends most of the time trying to actually get to hell, where you have, people that actually are honest and don't suck and don't have a lot of those issues. So hopefully one day that gets published.
It's a great premise.
But that's kind of along the lines of what I was thinking of is, and part of what kicked that off is a discussion that I saw. I can't remember where I saw it. It was either like a YouTube video or something talking about how there was Christians making the argument that Hitler actually made it to heaven because he believed in God, right? Because that's really the only thing you got to do.
Yep.
Which is stupid. Or Jeffrey Dahmer, I guess, was a big one that they held up, right? Jeffrey Dahmer became a Christian in prison, so it doesn't matter that he killed and raped and ate people. He still made it to heaven. So who the fuck wants to go to heaven with Jeffrey Dahmer? You know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, who's in hell? Carl Sagan and George Carlin. I'm down. I'd so much rather be there. You know what I'm saying? And listen to Slayer rather than, yeah. Or I was trying to think of who's the I hate country music. So I was trying to, I just, the concept is silly when you really think about it. And I have a hard time believing that people actually believe in those kinds of, the cartoonish visions of heaven and hell. I just think they're silly. I do think that there's more, if you're going to look for a legitimate belief, I think there's probably more people that believe more strongly in things about an afterlife, like a reincarnation or, some type of continuation or your spirit goes on or whatever. In my life personally, that type of belief among my friends, people that believe in ghosts, spirituality, karma, those kinds of things, those types of beliefs are more prevalent in my own realm than fundamental Christian stuff. And talking about Ken Hovind, those people, that and the transformed wife or Ray Comfort or whoever those people are, those to me feel like parodies. I have such a hard time believing that those people, I actually talked about this with Seth Andrews. I was like, you're going to have a really hard time convincing me that those people are actually serious people about what they're talking about. Because I don't know how you would spew that kind of bullshit and actually really believe it. I don't. I think it's a grift and I think it's a con. My brain will not let me think that people actually believe that kind of shit. It's really stupid.
And a friend of mine was taught science from Ken Hovind tapes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. And especially, like I said, the transformed wife, I still don't think she's real. I really don't think she's real.
Nobody could be that detestable.
Yeah, I think she's shitty on purpose. And I think she gets a lot of attention. And I think that it boggles my mind that anybody would really believe that. I just can't go there. There's no way that person is a real serious human being. There's just no way. How do you say that and not realize what you're saying is ethically and morally abhorrent? It's you can't talk about being a good person and all this kind of stuff and say the kind of shit that you're saying. That's just, you're the shittiest human being on the face of the planet. If there was a God, he would send you to hell just for being such a shithead. I don't, if there's any sense of morality or ethics or anything like that at all, those people just can't exist. in my head. I don't get it. I think it's just a symptom of the internet, really.
I think Kent is probably one of the most obviously con men I've ever seen in my life, aside from Trump.
That's what I was just going to say. I was like, no, there's a bigger one. There's
Second
a bigger
biggest
one. Yeah. That one is the most, I mean, I don't know. I guess that blows my argument out of the water because I can't believe people I know, smart people I know, look at that guy and think that he's like this champion of truth and honesty. And I'm like, dude, he's like the orange Nigerian prince.
Only thinks about himself every day, all day, never thinks about anything other than himself. How
does anybody ever seriously think that he could ever be on their side? And
how does anybody think he's a fucking Christian
or a businessman? Right?
Yeah.
And seriously, I firmly believe that he is our first atheist president, as disgusting and shitty as that is.
I agree.
I absolutely think that that's the truth. That dude don't believe in God. That dude is certainly not a Christian.
He's also the first obvious psychopath president in my lifetime.
I don't know psychopath. I would not feel comfortable saying that as a server and not a psychologist. But as far as an extreme narcissist or a malignant narcissist goes, I would feel comfortable in saying that and feeling pretty confident that I'm right. If only because I've had experience with that type of personality and watching them operate, where their entire world revolves around themselves and feeding their own ego and stirring the pot, planting rumors, conning people, all that kind of stuff. It all revolves around what's in it for them. And that was really because even beyond policy, politics, everything, I was so horrified that dude got elected. Not really even because of the politics or the policies, but because he was such an obvious fraud. Because anybody who lived through the 90s saw him for what he was. It was all over everywhere. There was no hiding that he was a huge piece of shit that was a liar and a thief and a con man. And then all of a sudden, he'd had this reality show where they fluffed him up and, caked makeup on him and pretended that he was this big successful thing. And it's like, how do you erase the 20 years before that of him filing for bankruptcy, of all his failed businesses, of him walking out on contractors, of literally shitting all over the little people that he is now supposed to be this champion for?
Borrowing millions from Russian oligarchs.
The whole thing, and it's all admitted to. It's all literally there. Like it's on tape, him saying that.
I wonder, I know he's not great at paying his bills, but I wonder if he actually paid for the abortions that he insisted that get had.
I mean, relatively speaking, they're not very much, so I'm kind of thinking, but would it surprise me?
I know, but back in the day, no. $140.
Yeah, I mean, no, the whole thing is it's really a symptom of, I think, of either a lack of education or the fact that we have a huge segment of our population that is just really, really gullible.
I think a lot of it had to do with who was the president before him.
Oh, yeah. 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 The first time I heard Gorilla in Heels at a family gathering, my own family gathering, that was my clue. That was really my clue that it really had nothing to do with, especially when you look at his own politics and policies were really very centrist. He couldn't have been more middle.
Well, he's very popular among people with cash.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like he was some huge progressive, rabid liberal. He just wasn't. The only issue they had with him was that he was fucking black. Ish. It wasn't even all the way black.
Yeah, it was mostly black.
Yeah. So I mean,
that has to be one of the fun parts about Obama, because you've got people who hate him, and some will say, well, he wasn't a black president, just to degrade him, and others will say, well, yeah, he's black, but he's not American. because he wasn't born in America. So
his mom's white and from Kansas.
Yeah, he was born in
There's nothing
America.
more white than a woman from Kansas.
Yeah, you can put that one to bed. He was definitely born in America.
Not according to the president who followed him.
We've already established that dude's an idiot and a liar. I was really encouraged when he was elected.
Yeah, I thought we'd actually made the turn there for a while.
Yeah, I really did. And hang on 1 second. There we go. I had the wrong computer plugged in and it's like, your battery's dying. No, I was really encouraged after Bush in 2008 and kind of watching all that stuff. I was really happy, and I did think that we had turned a corner. And I mean, I guess I feel a little naive now, but that was how I had felt at first.
Oh, well, and so in the meantime, while we were talking, it's kind of funny because there are a few Christians in the chat trying to out-Christian each other. One of them, I would say, comes close to being Trump, denying the shit that he pulls off on the internet. And I won't even mention his name. I'm not going to have him have any fame here on this channel. But so I wanna get to something else. So you've also been a writer. Can you tell us a little bit about how it got you to writing, and specifically the books that you've written so far?
Well, my first book that was actually just re-released and republished back in February, Dirty Money. I started writing that must have been 2013, maybe even 2012 when I started to write that. My mom was still around, and I had gotten really tired of, the Dr. Phil stereotype about strippers. I'd had a lot of funny stories, gross stories. I'd had a lot to say. I had always wanted to be a writer. And I thought, fuck it. I'm just going to do it. I'm tired of, thinking about it. And of course, being a dancer, I had plenty of people say, oh, you should write a book. And, and then of course, there's always the people that say, oh, I'm going to write a book one day. I'm going to write a book one day. And then they never actually write a book. And so I thought, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to start doing it. And that's what I did. I started doing it. And my mom had passed away pretty close to it being finished. And so I took a little break after that because I was just devastated, really. And I ended up finishing it. I self-published it, put it on Amazon, and really kind of walked away. I didn't know anything about trying to promote. I didn't really have a lot of interest in social media. Believe it or not, I still am not a huge fan of social media. I know, despite my big mouth on Twitter, I just kind of let it go. And then I was getting ready to quit, and I wrote my second book, which is Think You Want to Be a Stripper. And I thought, let me go ahead and get the rest of my, it's like a series of essays, I'd say, on the industry. So I talk about stripper etiquette. I talk about prostitution in the strip club, which I'm not a fan of. I'm totally morally, ethically for prostitution, being of age, mutual consent, all that kind of stuff. Totally down for it. Don't want to compete with it in this strip club.
Not at work.
Yeah, because the whole point of being a stripper is actually not,
right.
Yeah. Lap dances are supposed to be anticlimactic. It's kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
And not to mention, once that happens, like, you're not making any more money. You know, you want to get them right to that point, and then be like, "Oh, you like another song?"
Don't ruin the joke that there's no sex in the champagne room.
There you go. Yeah, there should not be. Ideally speaking, there shouldn't be. So I write about that, but I also write about like the mind fuck that is stripping sometimes. You know, when your money's attached to your looks, dealing with rejection. I talk about choice. I talk about empowerment. I talk about exploitation, specifically exploiting, misogynists, because you get a lot of them and they're really easy to drain. And then when I got involved with FFRF, and I had, like I said earlier, like I had met the chapter president, she, I had already been kind of into the skeptic community, critical thinking and things like that. And so that was when she said, "Hey, what about we write this book?" And so that was when I wrote about, taking risks, the risks obviously of becoming a stripper. I talked about logical fallacies and all that kind of stuff, but I framed it around dancing. So when I talk about cognitive biases, I talk about how I would categorize customers based on my own biases, and then it would turn out that I was wrong. And so I basically kind of, lay out the concepts for those. And then also talk about humanism in that context also, where, not every strip club customer or interaction is actually about sex or sexual. There's a lot of emotion there. And not every guy is a shithead. In fact, the vast majority of them aren't. Men really do treat you with respect and caring, because after all, we're all people, and the vast majority of people, aren't dickheads. They just aren't, even in that context. So that was how Expose Yourself came about. And then just very recently, like I said, I re-released Dirty Money. It's been edited, updated, and released by Weasel Press. And then I co-authored a crime novel called Stripper Noir with a lovely gentleman named Armin Rosamia, who is going to be, that book should be coming out later this year. And then I also was asked to be a contributor on the new media site called Only Sky, which is geared towards the non-religious and the secular community. So lots of great writers on there. I'm sure you've seen Hemet and a bunch of other people posting their stuff from there. So yeah, somehow I ended up being a stripper atheist writer, not,
I had a friend of mine I used to write. He was part of his list of jobs was stand-up comedian. I used to write jokes with him. One of 3 stand-ups I used to write jokes with. He lived in a very small town, and he got invited to do stand-up on the wagon in the center of town during the town fair. And the first joke I wrote for him for that day was to introduce himself as Garrett's only gay stand-up comedian mortician, because he was those 3 things. And he's like, "I can't fucking do that. I'll never get a job again." Doing what? Do you want to do stand-up or not? Needless to say, he didn't come out to his town. He did tell the story 1,000 times in front of me, but they wouldn't tell the joke, which it was not the kind of place where you say shit like that. It was wow, that town's probably all of 15 minutes away from the old KKK headquarters. So it's not a place where you go, "Hey everybody, I'm gay, and I live right over there."
Yeah, probably not. I think I kind of experienced some of that as I as I came out at Atheist, and I was thinking, and especially once I really figured out I guess it just really shows how naive I was. The actual definition of atheist is so benign and non-threatening. Like, it just is really, it's really nothing. Like, it's really literally nothing. And it's so incredibly offensive. to some people that it just blows me away. It's like, why does it bother you? Why does it upset you so much that I just don't believe in shit?
You think we should all have freedom of thought, but yet you think what I think is horrible.
Yeah, and like evil. And it's not just, you know, it's not just atheism. It was that, especially when I was writing, and maybe I was a little pushy about it. So maybe I earned a bit of it. But like when I was researching this stuff for Expose Yourself, like one of the chapters is on ghost hunting. I actually was a ghost hunter for probably around 15 years. My best friend and I would go to different places and get hammered and, you know, look for ghosts. It was
I got a friend that does that in Germany.
Yeah, no, it was lots of fun. It's lots of fun. Never actually saw a ghost though. I thought I did a couple times, or thought we had, you know, those spooky experiences. And as I researched it for my book, I realized I could actually debunk every single spooky experience I ever had, to the point where there was no more. That completely eliminated that belief. And of course, while I was researching it, I talked too much, if you haven't noticed. And I mentioned that in the dressing room, because I've never worked in a strip club that didn't have a ghost story. Not ever. Not really? In one club. 5 states, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 clubs. I've never worked in a club that did not have a ghost story attached. And so they were talking about lockers shutting and cold things and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, ooh, I know exactly why that happens. So of course I opened my big fat mouth and piss off this chick who, I don't know, probably had half a foot and like 60 pounds on me. And it's not a good idea. Not and she got really mad and like didn't talk to me for, I don't know, probably a month or so. In fact, actually, when I went back last weekend, she didn't talk to me either.
Did she bring her EMF reader to work?
No, God, but it's all about the essential oil and the fucking sages and the crystals and this and that. And I'm like, no, dude, it's bullshit.
Yeah, no, all of it's bullshit.
It's not though. So it's not even just atheists that can be, you know, kind of a prickly thing. It's people are so attached to believing in things that there's just no evidence for. I do think some of that starts with religion and religious concepts, but you know, there's a whole lot of woo and silly science, pseudoscience stuff that goes along, you know, just in our culture that yeah, people don't like it when you tell them it's not true.
I was watching, it was an English comedian was doing stand-up in Australia, and he said, people want to make fun of Australia because it was started as a penal colony for prisoners from England. But the United States started when people were too religious for England in the 17th century. That's an extraordinarily valid point. Yeah, we started with the worst motherfuckers that England had to offer, and the prisoners went somewhere else. It is funny that Australia has become as conservative as it has over the years.
I think I noticed some of that. That was another thing that I really hadn't realized how naive I was when I became active on social media and in the secular community and all that kind of stuff was, you know, I'm from California. And so my whole frame of reference and the way that I interact with the world is very much from California. Mm-hmm. So it's always like a shock to me when I leave and I'm like, nobody eats any fruits or vegetables.
They're expensive everywhere else.
It's just so weird to me. And then so I have a hard time like having any kind of concept of what's outside my state. And I'm like, I leave for a little bit and I'm like, fuck, I'm so happy to get back. But then like other countries, you know, as Americans, we're really pretty fucking sheltered.
Oh yeah.
Don't really think about how, number one, how the other world or the other part, you know, the other countries like view us, which is terrifying after Trump. That's like really embarrassing. I met a Canadian before I quit dancing. It must have been like 2019 or something. Who said, yeah, we're gonna build a wall to keep you fuckers out. I was like, I can't blame you.
Yeah, and it makes more sense than us doing it.
Yeah, or like I was in Vegas and I met somebody from Ireland, and I always say that I'm Irish because I'm probably half Irish. Erin is obviously Irish, and that's both of my parents are half Irish, and so we've always called ourselves Irish. I have Balik China and all sorts of stuff from Ireland. I ring from Ireland, and I called myself Irish, and dude got really mad. He was like, "You're not Irish, you're American," and I was like, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "Well, you're just a mutt," and I'm like,
So are you?
Yeah, because I'm French and I'm, Scandinavian.
I don't know if you know this about
German,
the islands, but
and so I do not call myself Irish anymore, not at all, because I'm not. I'm an American mutt, and that's just the reality of the situation.
I used to work with a guy in Cerritos. His mom was Japanese and his dad was German, and they were both immigrants. And I was like, "Your parents started World War II."
Well, technically,
my family's Polish and German, so
yeah, but we don't, as Americans, we don't. I think that's almost by design. They talk about American exceptionalism and things like that, and I think that's part of some of the issues where we're coming into like book banning and stuff like that. They really want to keep us isolated in that respect. And my son, when we were talking about that, my son is 17, and like kind of a nerd and all into like history and stuff like that. And when we started talking about book banning, which isn't really a huge deal because I'm in, libtard California. He said, they're because, part of the justification for removing, especially like the racial type stuff and LGBT and whatever is, they're trying to say that they want white people or straight people or whatever to, they don't want their kids to feel guilty or, things like that. And my son said, he said, Mom, I think they're confusing guilt with empathy. And I think that kind of gets to the heart of why Americans in particular are kind of stuck in this silly little spot where, we're taught that we're the greatest country. And, right now we're advocating for a bill to kind of change actually California's constitution to help teach Native American history, including their religion, of course, from an objective point of view. Because like when I was taught, we gave Native Americans in California Jesus and clothes, like we championed it like this was this great thing. And it's like, no, we actually like murdered them and like decimated their culture. But yet they painted as this like great thing. And that was something that I really didn't have a good idea of, not only how sheltered I was just being in California, like learning about what goes on in the South, like, holy shit. Oh my God. Could you imagine being an atheist in the South? Or the rest of the world? I've met so many people now from all over the place. Australia, New Zealand, which we kind of always thought was the same damn thing. Don't ever make that mistake. I did that in the strip club too. Not a good look. The New Zealanders don't like to be called Australian. I found that out the hard way. But yeah, no, we're really sheltered. And so coming into the secular community really opened my eyes, not only to other countries, different cultures, but different cultures that exist actually outside of California. As weird as that is, that like places even exist outside of California.
I know, it's so weird.
It is just mind-boggling.
It's
like, how does somebody have a pool?
It's a state full of transplants, but nobody can remember that they ever lived anywhere else.
I have always lived here. I literally grew up next to Disneyland. Like, not even kidding.
Oh my God. I lived at Magnolia and Lamson.
Ah.
That wonderful neighborhood.
I grew up in Orange County, so Fullerton, like next to Anaheim and stuff.
I lived a block and a half away from Steve Martin's mom.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Bicycle ride to Knott's Berry Farm where he had his first job.
Oh, I love Knott's Berry Farm.
Me too.
It's way better than Disneyland, man. Way better.
Disney World is way better than Disneyland too.
I've never been to Disney World.
It's so much better.
I'm not sure I want to go to Florida now.
The weather's horrible, but it's so much nicer. Everything about it is nicer, and everything about it is bigger. I had only ever been to Disney World, and then I move out there, and I'm like, sweet, we can go to Disneyland. I'm like, wait a minute. This is like Disney Light. It's really little and
I tried to take my kid to Disneyland. Actually, we were kicking it around when we were planning our vacations, our 2020 vacation, which of course went nowhere. We stayed home, and he didn't want to go. He didn't want to go. He had no interest in Disneyland. And I thought about it. First, I was disappointed. And then I was like, I mean, what the fuck is it now? It's all, corporate bullshit. So we ended up going to Kauai eventually, which was much better.
Yeah, I probably would have preferred that too. But
yeah,
I do like Disney World. But I'm also a raging pothead that is into that kind of shit.
So that's the problem with smoking pot and me is I can't go on rides anymore because now I get like all spinny and like nauseated.
I can't go on rides because I'm a fucking heart patient. I've survived 3 fucking heart attacks.
Oh, well, that'll do it, I guess.
I can't do anything fun. I'm not exactly the world's most compliant patient, if you hadn't noticed.
I'm sorry. I just got back. I completely zoned out when Artie said my family's German and Polish. So actually, when the Germans invaded Poland, we got Artie. Yep. I think that's how it worked. Yeah. Artie's a World War II baby.
My grandmother was a raging anti-Catholic bigot. Lutheran. She grew up Lutheran, which was weird because that's not really a Lutheran thing. But by the same token, this town has the country's first Lutheran high school, and they don't teach evolution there. And that's not really a Lutheran thing either. So Martin Luther spawned an awful weird breed that vary wildly depending on the church.
The whole thing gets me, honestly. I really do think that religion is more of a cultural thing at this point than people that really honestly believe that shit, at least in my own head. I think a lot of it is, and maybe it's just I relate it back to my own experience and my mother and that kind of stuff. But I really think that culturally you're kind of supposed to believe in something. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from. Even after I lost a lot of my faith and I had really given into my doubts and while I hadn't identified as an atheist, I still called myself a Christian, even though I knew that, the whole blood thing, which is just gross and stupid. And it's like zombies and blood, like
it's fucking vampirism.
The whole thing is just goofy. But even when I recognized that and was like, well, that's just dumb. I don't believe that. And even when I stopped trying to think I was talking to somebody in my head, I still identified as a Christian. And I really think that there's a lot of people that fall into that category. Even my own friends, when I came out as atheist, will still identify as spiritual or Christian or whatever, but in privately will admit that they either have massive doubts to the point where they don't think it's real, but still identify that way for the sake of not catching a bunch of shit, which I can certainly relate to.
Yeah.
That had a lot to do with why I was talked into going, writing Expose Yourself and becoming, getting on social media, because it really was my chapter president of FFRF. Thanks, Judy. That put me put me out there and was like, you've dealt with stigmas and stereotypes. She goes, you could really be a voice for this community. And that was really what convinced me to do that, is the fact, well, you know what? I've already caught a bunch of shit for being a stripper. Might as well catch some more shit for being an atheist, So you're welcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Must be horrible living in California.
It's terrible. My pool is right out there. It's too cold for me to get in there, but
my Mike Pence country is right. We have a law. We still have a state law from the Mitch Daniels era when he was a governor, because Indiana just stacks the great fucking governors. That it is legal for a landowner to use their deeply held religious beliefs to do things like not offer your place for rent to somebody who doesn't believe like you do.
Oh,
Even though that's very obviously against the Constitution.
yeah.
But it hasn't been challenged in Indiana, so it's never gotten that far, so it's still on the books.
Well, I think we are about to have a pretty gnarly conversation about states' rights.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a big conversation about how much bigger the court's about to get.
And it's funny, I was not in favor necessarily of expanding the court. There were two separate speakers back at the FFRF convention in Boston. One was in favor of expanding the court, basically to prevent what looks like is about to happen. And the other was saying that no, because what happens when we get a different president and they decide to do the same thing, and we're kind of
but we started at 5
doing that kind of stuff, and I really lean towards not expanding the court. Not that my opinion necessarily matters, but that was my thought on it, was that I kind of agreed with leaving it as is. And I do believe that I've changed my position. Either that or we take a look at the motivation, the ethics of how the justices that we have on there got there.
Yeah.
I think that's something that is worth looking into. But yeah, I think we're about to have some pretty deep conversations, and the Pollyanna in me is saying that, maybe this is going to be the catalyst for actual meaningful change and exposing the Christian nationalists who have kind of gotten all up in there. And maybe this will end up being a catalyst for good. That's the only way that I can like go through my day.
We got 3 conservative justices appointed by a president that lost by 3 million votes.
Yeah, and there's some shady shit behind a couple of them. Clarence Thomas, even too, way before that. There's some shady shit.
There is no way Clarence Thomas would make the court now.
No, and considering the fact that everybody was screaming and yelling about 2 celebrities smacking each other, on an award show, when we had the wife of said justice, obviously involved in some pretty serious shit.
Yeah. Your wife's a seditionist, huh? That's
yeah, and we weren't talking about that. We were talking about one dude slapping another dude.
Well, that is visually more entertaining.
I was entertained. I thought it was hilarious. I was like, we could make a whole show about this.
I thought it was fucking
celebrities
horrifying.
Just slapping each other. I don't give a shit.
It was so horrible. Two guys that I like.
Now, if he'd actually punched him, like because that's what first trended on Twitter was Will Smith punched him, and I was like, I found the video. It took me a minute to find the video, and I found the video, and I was like, what?
Even Chris Rock says he slapped the shit out of me.
He slapped the shit out of him. That's what he did. He slapped the shit out of him.
Yeah, he did.
Was it inappropriate? Of course.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Was it worth the bullshit in light of all the other really nasty shit that we should have be paying attention to? No, it wasn't. It was a bunch of celebrity fucking bullshit gossip that whatever the fuck.
There have been
didn't warrant the kind of shit that went along with it when we were looking at the seriousness of the other stuff that was going on.
Oh yeah, Ukraine is being bombed. Kiev's actually being bombed literally at the same time. But
we had bigger things to worry about. As far as I'm concerned, celebrities should be slapping each other more often. I don't care.
We had a president that made Republicans root for Russia. Do you ever think in your fucking life that would ever happen?
No, I gotta say I was pretty surprised. Although at this point, maybe I am too Pollyanna and naive in the fact that I was surprised. But yeah, no, but like I said, I do think that when this kind of really shitty thing comes to light, the same thing with like the book banning, the second those books started to become banned, every single kid in those districts was trying to get their hands on them. So I do think that when we bring this kind of rotten stuff out in the open, it gives us a chance to deal with it. And it really highlights it, as opposed to getting caught up with the Kardashians or whatever the fuck is going on on social media or reality TV. I think that this gives us a chance to really say, hey, look, there's some serious shit happening and we need to deal with it. So that's my take on the whole thing, is that we can't hide from it anymore. It's right there.
Well,
Agreed.
and one thing, I think the two celebrities you talked about, that was a huge missed thing, because that would have been the great start of the revival of a series that I love to watch, mainly because of the dynamics between the dad and the mother. They could have made a whole new series, Everybody Hates Chris, and then do it with
What's funny is I still like both of them.
yes,
You
me
know what
too.
I'm saying? I'm not going to not watch a Will Smith movie. Hancock's probably one of my favorite movies.
But
I still like Chris Rock. I mean, fuck it.
Going forward, I definitely have a different opinion of Will Smith, and it's not necessarily his fault. What I really have a different opinion of is his wife.
It's one of those things where I have medical bills sometimes, like for my whole family, counting my premiums and copays that are more than my mortgage. They don't have that kind of shit.
Yeah.
They have room in their lives to really focus on that kind of bullshit minutia.
Have you seen any of the video from their house?
No, and I don't care. That's really my biggest thing, is that I just don't give a fuck, because I just don't think it's important.
Pool on the cliffs overlooking the ocean. Their
pool. I don't feel
goes to the
sorry for
horizon.
any of them. I'm grateful. I'm happy that.
Oh yeah, no, I don't. Well, I don't wish ill will, but
no, I like their art.
I would like very much for Will to get the help that he fucking needs. I'd like for his wife to get control of whatever the fuck it is that she's lost control of in herself.
Yeah, they obviously have issues. They obviously have issues.
I hope the guy that spent his childhood being bullied recovers from the fact that as an adult on fucking national television, he got bullied again. And it was horrible, but you're right. It's in the grand scheme of things, who gives a fuck? It was one rich guy hit another rich guy. It's a little hard to be overly exercised about it.
I was bullied too.
I wasn't bullied at school. I was bullied at home.
Yeah, I got
my brother and his friends
quite a bit, actually. But I just, I just didn't think it was.
In all fairness,
that's part of my beef with social media in the first place, is that so many of these little things just get hugely overblown. People that are stupid become famous for nothing. That's, a lot of my issue there. And most of the time I just write that stuff off. I just don't dwell on it. I have a lot of other shit going on. So.
Yeah, in all fairness, Artie gets bullied on this channel too. So we're continuing on that.
He looks like the kind of kid that would get bullied.
Yes.
It's weird how I handle myself now versus when I was a kid. Because I used to just take a bunch of shit, and then one day I decided I wasn't going to do that anymore. And life has been very different since then.
Mm-hmm.
I gave in the temptation to look up one of my bullies the other day on Facebook, and she's a meth addict.
See?
So I kind of, yeah, I feel all right about it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did you send her a note like,
nope.
"Hey, dead tooth, I just wanted to say hi"?
Nope. Nope. Methamphetamine ain't good for your skin, is it?
Yeah.
No, it's cool.
You smoke that shit, it's gonna eat your teeth. Oh, never mind.
She's a Trump supporter too. Go figure.
Oh, what a shock.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
Well, and that's the only
California meth is a white trash drug.
That's the only thing
I grew up.
The only thing I hate about Trump is, and you can hate it. On the other hand, it's probably pretty useful, is that now we can at least identify the assholes, because all of them came out of the woodwork, not just in America, globally. That is something that he at least can take credit for, because now these people feel vindicated and speak up, and we know exactly who they are and what they do, because, and maybe that's a good thing, but at least we can battle that when they're hidden.
You certainly picked out the gullible ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they were the ones rushing to the ATM.
And so here's the thing, and there's another thing, and you mentioned, I think, that earlier, and I think that is probably has something to do with religion as well. If you grow up and if you're being conditioned to believe something, that there's a guy in the pulpit and you have to believe what he says, you're open to believing all of the bullshit you see. You go on YouTube, watch your video that the earth is flat, and obviously because this guy has a good production value, most likely with a lot of money behind it, because some of them just do. And so here's a guy propping himself up, and yeah, see, he's probably right. And you're not going to question things because you're conditioned not to question things. That is, I think, still another problem with religion. And
Peter, have you happened to look at Mike's channel? The guy
Mike?
that did the first video on
no,
Helmick?
no,
He's got like 57,000 subs now.
yeah.
He's got merch. It's a flat earther Christian that I got so pissed off in an argument with him on G Plus that I decided I was going to start a fucking YouTube channel. And I made my first 2 videos just on him. And I'm trying to get hate. I mean, I'm literally going out of my way to piss people off with some of the shit that I would say. And what I got from Mike was, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to seriously consider my arguments. I'm like, motherfucker, are you kidding me? I just shit down your neck for an hour and a half. You fucking prick. I can't believe it. And he's a raging anti-Lutheran bigot. So it was really weird.
I loved his title that he had on screen, because he sat in the wrong position. He had behind him, he had Bible Earth, and he sat just in front of the F, so it looked like it said Bible Farth.
Yeah, the E. He sat underneath the bottom of the E, so it looked like.
Oh, the E, yeah. So it looked like an F. But I told you, you need to get back. I use
that as my thumbnail.
You need to get back and doing videos like that. People will love that, and we'll promote it here. But we've come up at the hour and a half mark, so I would like to start closing this up. Erin, anything we've not talked about yet that you wanna get out?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything.
Okay, so
including stuff I didn't think I was going to talk about. I hate talking about politics.
Where can people find you? If people want to look you up,
obviously, my website is kind of my hub where you can find all my books, links to my Only Sky column, along with a whole lot of other really good contributors on that site. Lots of good insight there. I also have a Patreon page, which is kind of some short erotica and maybe a dirty picture here and there. Subscription page. Let's see. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Erin Lewis 666. I recently started a Instagram account, which I'm kind of on the fence of. So convince me to keep that if you care. And that's pretty much it. And
I forgot to ask you about this before the show. Send me all of the links in Twitter, and I will put all the links to your media and where people can find you in the description, so it would be a lot easier for people to actually find you. I wanna thank you for coming on. This was a great conversation. So I have to thank Artemis too, because he said we need to get Erin on the show. So thanks for that, Artie. You did a good thing for once.
I'm gonna scratch my ass and call it you.
See? Okay, and I want to thank the people in the chat. That was, I think, pretty lively. Having several Christians in there. It wasn't really about the topic that we were talking about, but seeing two Christian out-Christian each other in the chat on a show with an atheist is it's pretty funny, I think. Sorry for
All
that.
right. Well, I really appreciate you guys having me on. It was fun.
Yeah, and if there's ever something that you want to promote or you want to come back, just feel free to shoot us a DM on Twitter, and we'll do another show. So, as I said, thank you to everyone. We'll leave with a special word of our latest sponsor for people who haven't seen that yet. Sadly, the people in here won't have the audio, but stick around, Erin, and I'll play it back later. So, thank you, everybody, for coming, and keep an eye out on the channel. We've got a few more guests lined up, so we will be back soon. Bye, everyone. Whoops.
Listen to this. Our visitors watched almost 18 million minutes of our videos on YouTube. I'm telling you, praise God. Can you imagine that? I want to say a big thank you to all of our YouTube subscribers and all of our partners. Now listen, if you have not subscribed to a YouTube channel, do it right now. Do it today. And all you have to do is click the big red subscribe button. Be sure to share our channel with your family and with friends, because it takes all of us working together to spread the word